sometimes you're thinking and sometimes you're being. So I display this into a couple contexts. When for you, you might be still thinking about the basketball court when you're off the basketball court, when you're driving. For me, I I might be still thinking about Latunia whilst I'm walking into uni. Um, but the problem with this is you're not present. And I was also, when I was walking back from London to get my bus, I was really like, I was thinking about, we left and you were like, this is some good space, some thinking time. But I couldn't really think of anything. So then I stopped forcing myself to think of stuff. And then I was like, there was this half an hour where I was like fully present, walking through Westminster with like kind of just seeing like all these orange leaves surrounding me. And it was really beautiful. But with all
Mm.
that to say, um, I've been questioning like, should you be present all the time? Because the argument against it is if you're present, then you're not necessarily making tomorrow better. When you're thinking, you're trying to make tomorrow better, but in that, you're not living right now. So I'll leave you with that. Get your thoughts, and then I'll respond with my thoughts.
Mm. I think being able to do what you're doing now at full or like a good level of intensity. So let's say I'm trying to write a new post or script a video and I'm trying to sort of pin down an idea that's quite vague in my head. It's important for me to be there. If I'm trying to outline a theory I've got or explain a concept that's not quite coherent in my mind yet, and I'm still thinking about the basketball game that I had at the weekend or the camp that I'm driving to this evening to play in tomorrow. If I'm thinking about those two different areas of my life at the same time, then my output in the writing part of that will be not as clear. It'll be like the water will be muddied because I'm trying to do two things at once in my own brain. And to me, my point to you would be me doing the writing at 100% intensity will be good for tomorrow because I will have produced more quality creative work. And equally, then, when I go to play basketball the next day or I go to the fixture at the weekend, it means that when I'm playing basketball, I do that at full intensity. I'm not thinking about the video script I have to finish or the assignment at university that's not yet done or that conversation that didn't go how I wanted it to with that stranger or that friend, whatever, right? You can place any example into that. And actually, it's kind of like something I've been thinking about recently as well of when I'm not doing a thing to not be too stuck contemplating the past and creating the future. Specifically, maybe in a sporting context, like I train hard, I do like care about my sport to a degree, but then when I'm not training, when I'm having a podcast conversation, when I'm in the sauna, when I'm writing, when I'm just eating dinner or just chilling out, watching TV or whatever, to be doing that thing, not thinking about the basketball game or like keeping things as they are. Because I think just from a mental health perspective, that presence is valuable. I kind of understand what you're trying to say in that, if you're always thinking about now, then what about, you in the future, you tomorrow, you next year? Are you working towards that? But my counter argument would be if you do today well and you do the right things today, then they accumulate to positive future outcomes anyway. It's like kind of being process oriented, not worrying about the future outcome. It's like if I see the tasks of today, as long as they're putting me in the right direction, if I get those done to a good standard, then tomorrow takes care of itself.
Mm, yeah, I agree with you, and it's a really it's a skill to like put 100% of yourself on one thing, and then go put that 100% of yourself into another thing. Like Sam Harris's, I think brother Dan Harris. I saw a clip of him saying that when you're meditating, every time you notice yourself, your mind wandering rather than being concentrated on one thing, it's like a bicep curl for the brain when you
Okay.
switch back. And I think I agree with you with you should put 100% focus into one task. But what about when you're not doing a task, when you're not doing a thing, when you're on a drive or on a walk? Because I think it would be lovely to be on a walk and be able to experience the unspeakable world from being. And that's a difficult thing. But another disadvantage would be like a lot of anxiety comes from the thinking in the future, doesn't it?
I think it comes back to that point that you aren't the constant ongoing narration in your own brain. Let's say you are on a walk or on a drive or something, and you just let your brain wander to where it's going to go. You're not choosing where it's going, and you're aware that it's going in these directions that you wouldn't select and that you don't want to think about right now, or maybe better to just appreciate how the trees look or think about your driving more or something. But I think it's useful to have time where you let your brain rest. You're not forcing information into it because that's what meditation is. Meditation is not trying to not think. Meditation is about becoming aware of the thoughts and the narratives and ideas that are constantly running through your mind and how they're separate to your awareness. And then when you do that practice, I think when you come back to the awareness, like you realize you're thinking, there's a level of metacognition there where you become aware of what you're thinking about. That helps you then step into more sort of present states where your mind isn't elsewhere because you have sort of learned to connect more with that awareness that lives underneath all our ongoing thoughts anyway.
Yeah,
It's like you said, that Dan Harris guy. It's funny they're actually not brothers, even though they have the same surname and they talk about the same stuff. They were together on an episode of Rogan, I think. But
yeah, that's the clip I saw.
that idea that idea that it's a bicep curl for the brain is true, man. You can train your attention. It's something that like I need to remind myself of constantly. It's like even just like the basic whipping your phone out and scrolling on YouTube or whatever, or constantly checking your emails. That's darting your attention to somewhere else that isn't where you are now. Um,
I
and that's a skill.
I think the takeaway is that you're noticing that you're doing that is kind of voluntarily you're taking your mind away because a lot of activities do take your mind away from reading a book to watching a film to scrolling. You kind of want to choose that you're taking your mind away.
Mm.
And then I guess it is funny the from the Andrew episode the other week when he was like, "Our mind isn't here; it's all around." Although it sounds like a weird statement, but it's true. When you're reading a Harry Potter book, your mind isn't around the coffee shop. Your mind is within that story through the characters.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, we are what we pay attention to. You know, that has such a big swing on everything. And yeah, I mean, the phenomena of perception and how how the way reality appears to us is different depending on our individual experiences and preferences and values is if I'm trying to get my head around, I've been trying to get my head around that idea for the last 2 years, and if people can just get something near to getting their head around that, I think it'll be so valuable. Realizing that what you is, that classic like cringy, like the secret idea that like if you think something, you can think it into reality. I don't necessarily think that's true, not to that sort of
What
simple extent, but what,
manifestation?
yeah, yeah, that kind of idea. But what I do believe is that the way your reality like there's so much I think I've talked about this in other episodes before, but there's so much to pay attention to. There's so much complexity. There's so many layers of information that our brain could perceive in reality, and yet we actually pay attention to a tiny fragment of it. Where your mindset, your values, your experiences in the past, your cognitive biases, they all influence what fragment of the spectrum of reality you actually focus on. That's what people mean when they say you can bring something into being, because It's all there, kind of. It's just what you pay attention to and focus on.
I think it's also okay not to be present for the whole day because that's kind of when you're present, everything's kind of unconscious. And like we've kind of discussed before, you can't be in flow state the whole day. So uh, to be consciously thinking is okay sometimes.
You gotta let your mind be. Because if you if you try and force your mind to be a certain way, even if it's trying to be clear and at peace all the time, well, you're still that's the antithesis of spiritual awareness, which is just letting the mind be what it wants to be and understanding that you aren't your mind, right? That's the main principle. And so even if you're trying to force your brain to be at a peaceful place, you're still forcing, which goes against a lot of the theory of just letting go, in a sense.
I read this interesting thing about Socrates the other day where it was, I think it's in the symposium or one of the symposiums in Greece where the ancient Greeks would come and sort of discuss ideas and drink wine and stuff. And a bunch of these philosophers are about to enter the symposium, where one guy's like, "Where's Socrates?" And another replies, "He's outside in the carriage, outside by the carriage, deep in thought." And so the guy's like, "Okay, fetch him, we're all going in." And then the other guy's like, "No, don't fetch him. When Socrates is deep in thought, he doesn't want to leave until his thought is completed." And I like this because I like the idea of fulfilling one's thoughts. Like
Mm.
people's think about all the business ideas, all the creative ideas that haven't been manifested because people haven't completed the thoughts, or just ideas in general. Like people have ideas every day, but they might only kind of half think it, and then their maybe intelligence or persistence doesn't develop it all the way. Um, yeah, I'll leave you with your thoughts on that, and then I'll add some more.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we think 100 of fragmentary, incoherent thought patterns every day, little flashes of an image, or a flashback to a past memory, or a vision for the future, or an idea, or we make a new connection between pieces of information. And that's why I love writing so much. That's why I try and write every single day if I can. Because it takes whatever I've been thinking about, whatever that vague notion in the back room of my mind is, it brings that forth into reality. And once you put it into words, something that the human intellect can understand, you put it in concrete form in a narrative on a page and you can reread it, it becomes real then. Something you can speak about, is something you can create something from. And I think it's also because people, not necessarily like they don't trust their own mind, but they're not aware of how much power is there in the things that just float around in their consciousness each day. People don't take time to just self-reflect and write. I feel like journaling is like a superpower if you do it regularly, because it kind of creates a separation between you and the narrative in your own head, and you can analyze that and draw the value from it and learn what makes you feel good and what improves the texture of your mind and what doesn't, and all of that. So yeah, I like the idea of a completed thought. Imagine, I mean, what a huge regret it would be if I died with ideas in my brain that I never did something with, you know?
Yeah, it puts like in the context of journaling very important as
Let me just jump in quickly before you go as well. That quote that I sent you, it's Peterson quoting his new book, We Who Wrestle with God, which I'm going to buy at some point and read, that I sent to you. Each man is called upon to say his piece. lest the world suffer in the absence of that singular and unique truth. I love that. It resonates with me so much. Each person can provide value with their individual experience of the world and their thoughts on it. And the world suffers if people don't express that, whether it's through a conversation with a friend or writing it in a journal that no one will ever read. Just use it. Express whatever's in your brain, because there's so much complexity and depth and meaning in doing that. Carry on.
Yeah, it's if you don't complete your thoughts, you don't find your truth, and then you're not able to express your truth. There's this another, I think it's one of Socrates' most famous quotes: "The unexamined life is not worth living." So there's a kind of a examination of maybe your development and what you think is true, that that is important. And I think also I've been like reflecting on the question of what is the soul, and Socrates, you were right in saying that it's kind of like your true self, and that like it's who you really are, the closer to who you really are. That's what Socrates said. So you're right with that the other week. Um, and in doing that, in in aligning with your truth, you're then kind of protecting your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important, man. It's really important in the way, it's a lesson I have to remind myself of constantly. Be who you are, you know, because what are you afraid of? People not accepting that? Well, okay. But if you pretend to be someone else, they're still not going to accept who you really are anyway, because you're hiding it, And when you do find the people and the situations that do absorb and appreciate your truth, God, what a meaningful experience that is. That's what self-actualization is. That's what Abraham Maslow talks about as the top of his hierarchy of needs. When you reach that point where who you really are becomes manifest in the world, you know.
And those that were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music.
Ooh, send that to me. That's nice. That's nice. I like that a lot.
And
Um, Go on.
the dance kind of represents not taking life seriously, and your phrase of like flirting with the world. And I think
Mm.
the music represents like the frequency of being able to do that.
Yeah.
And
No, I like that a lot. I would like you to send that to me. That's a good quote.
mm,
Yeah. And it's even like how I was with that Doris in Sainsbury's on Monday, bro.
and the
You know?
and the lady in the staff room.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
You
uh,
know, how
give the listeners some context to one of those.
I'll do the recent one of the Doris we met on Monday. Just this, like, oh, what did she say she was? 54 or something, like
Mm.
middle-aged lady. Looked a bit sort of lost. And I was in my day chair, so she was like apologizing about being in the way. And I was like, you're not in the way. Um, and then we ended up just chatting with her about the meal deals, I think it started with. And then she was like, oh, I bought a Trip, which is like the fizzy drink with like CBD in it because I find it quite relaxing. And then she was like, what's that about? I was like, it makes you very relaxed, Doris. And we just went into this long conversation about all wonders of things. And I could just tell how happy it was making her that another human being had acknowledged her that day. She didn't strike me as the kind of lady who's in a marriage. Maybe she lives on her own. I'm making assumptions here, obviously, but it's nice to just affect the world positively, isn't it? Especially if someone's appreciating it and is reciprocal of it. And yeah, me and you had a joke and a laugh about it, but the reality is that might be the highlight of her day. And like, people in the comments might take the piss out of me for going like, bro's harassing old women in Sainsbury's, but like, if you there, you'd feel the energy of how happy she was. And she was like, there should be more young men like you guys, just being nice. She said it's nice to be nice. I'm like, yes, it is.
Yeah,
I feel like from your perspective that I showed like that conversation showed you a different way of being with strangers.
mm, Yeah, I can only do that if I'm like if I say to myself that's what I'm gonna do. But
Mm.
it just kind of like it was you danced with it. It just came like uh naturally and freely. And the star from one I really liked because this
Oh, with you on Monday. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The lady with the. Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Joel goes in the uni staff room to heat his meal up in the microwave. One of the teachers comes in and says,
And is a bit confused initially, isn't she? Of why there are two students in here.
and you ask what she's got for her lunch, and she says soup. And then the whole conversation switches when you say something about. I think you say, "Is that soup gripping your soul?"
No, no. I said no. So this is what happened, right? She comes in. She's like, hello, and then I'm like, "How's your day going?" She's like, "All right, thanks." And she, you, and I was like, "Yeah, good." And then I was like, "What's on the menu today?" Do you know what I mean? Kind of like a playful question. I've got this soup. I'm like, "Oh, soup's good for warming the soul." That was what I said. And she was like, then she laughed, and then she was like, "Okay, this kid can stick around."
And
You know?
the energy of the room, like from that one line, you
Yeah.
feel the
And
change.
that's what annoys me when people are cynical or skeptical about like spirituality. Is it real? And I'm like, well, everyone understands when someone goes, the energy in the room shifted, even though we can't measure it with numbers. Like that's a real phenomena. You can feel the vibration or the energy in a interaction improve. You can feel it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of taking life too seriously. Like, um, why do you think people can't hear the music or so can't tune into the frequency?
Ooh. Why can people not hear the music? I think maybe a good angle to take it from is to think about myself and why are there some days where I don't hear the music? Because I'm not the guy you saw on Monday. That's me with my best mate coming to visit me on a pleasant day. But I'm not like that every minute of every day. That's an ideal you strive for, but it's not a reality. I think the days where I just overthink too much, get anxious about things I can't control, get bad sleep, don't eat well, just generally functioning in my own brain feels more difficult for whatever reason. Um, and then I lack that sense of freedom in my own mind. And yeah, I think the self consciousness and insecurity becomes too much to then be free. Because to have a conversation like that, to put yourself out there in a playful way, makes you liable to rejection. If that lady wasn't in the mood or she'd had a shit day, when I said the soup warms your soul, she could have been like, "Oh, just shut up, you knobhead." That you're out there vulnerable to someone doing that. It's a risk. So I think a lot of people are just very caught up in their own fears and anxieties.
Mm. Yeah, it's probably is an overthinking of maybe they want to do it or they want to do something or you want to do something, but you overthink it and it's too therefore it's too hard, or you don't think to be playful anyway in the first place, and you haven't been exposed to the frequency before or for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, people have so much noise in their minds, don't they? They could be doing a job that they really don't like, or there's a deadline on a project or a piece of work at uni or school that they haven't done that's hanging over their head, or they just fell out with their best friend, or they're arguing with their significant other, or their mum, or they have a difficult relationship with the family member, or it could be anything, man. There's so much noise in people's minds, and so I have to caveat everything I say with like, I understand that I have things pretty good, but in my head I have things pretty good because of a lot of self work I've done. So I can be a bit playful because I know that I've got a pretty good pathway in front of me, and I'm not a knobhead. So I don't know. It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. That question of why can't people hear the music? I'm gonna ponder on that more
Yeah,
because that's an important answer if we can pin one down.
I mean, we might be wrong. Maybe life should be serious,
Ooh,
and we shouldn't play because it's meant to. You're meant to be professional, and if you take a risk, you might make the lady feel uncomfortable, and she might not be able to respond, and it's so, there's maybe life should be more just about accomplishment and
100%.
getting that
We could be wrong.
canary wolf job.
I mean, Jake, we could be wrong about everything, but my answer to that is always, well, what feels right to me in my body and in my soul? Like, what do I when I go out and do it? What makes me feel expansive on an energetic level? And flirting with the world, being playful, being unserious seriously. That makes me feel good. You know, Matthew McConaughey on Modern Wisdom said that a sense of humor should be our default emotion. I like that a lot. That's a great way to live life.
What do you mean by default emotion? Like how we approach each interaction and
Hmm.
right.
Should be the default baseline to interpreting and interacting with every experience that we have. Of course, you're going to go through pain and hardship and disappointment and grief. But like, if your baseline is life's a joke, let's have a laugh at it, let's be silly with it, how much more contentment are you going to get out of your daily experience than if you took everything like it's life or death or felt the anxiety and the uncertainty that is in everything more deeply?
Yeah, it's the Alan Watts song of the writer misspells cosmic and Prince comic, and that angels fly because they take themselves lightly.
Mm. There's a lot about our experience that's completely improbable and hilarious, and it's good to see that side of it.
I want to go to a couple of my favorite posts of yours. So,
Mm-hmm.
talk to me about the backwards law.
Mm. Yes. Did you read the big article I sent you about this?
Yes, yes, it was good. I
Mm-hmm.
liked it.
Yes. This idea from, I think it stemmed from Alan Watts translating Eastern philosophy to Western audiences back in the 60s or something. But he basically said the more you want something, the more you feel a sense of lack for not currently having it. That and pursuing feeling better emphasizes the fact that we currently don't feel good. And that revealed to me how important it is where you set your aims on things. Like the more you desire an outcome, then the more obvious it becomes that you're not reached that outcome yet. And that means you're coming then from a fundamental ethos of lack and disappointment. Whereas if the outcome or the goal, if the aim is the process, is the journey there, is what you do on a daily basis, then your fundamental baseline that you approach the world with is already contentment. And everything else is just a bonus, or everything else just happens as a consequence. It's like if I focused, if I if my want in sport was medals or winning a certain tournament or winning a certain game, then everything is all the weight of my enjoyment in sport is put on that. And that's a dangerous, risky place to tie my emotions to. It comes from that fundamental place, or the fundamental approach to sport for me comes from a place of lack and fear that things might not go how I want them to go. But instead, if my aim is placed on wanting to just be an athlete with the processes and daily routines that come with that, and everything else is just a bonus, then I come from a place of contentment because I already have what I want. I'm an athlete. Does that make sense?
I think the solution, which you've spoke about before, is um, just the input, just to focus on the input, and it's kind of like the main reason that the summer was a tough time in parts because I was always desiring to, why can't my brand be lifted off the ground and we blow up? And because you get very caught in that want, you're every day you wake up in with the demons of lack around you, and
100%.
and now that my inputs are better, like um, I actually enjoy Latunia now. I didn't enjoy it like from September, before September. I didn't enjoy it because I couldn't even really get models. I had like with 100 follower clothing brand, like it shouldn't be hard to it shouldn't be this hard to get models, and it's like you come from I came from I was in such like a lost thing with it. But
Mm.
yeah, it's this idea is, I think it's crippling to a lot of people. I think in everyone's different context, they lack something, and then so they're or they want something, and then they're always in a position of lack.
Yeah, I have 2 points on this. One short one is a quote that always sticks out to me when we talk about these kind of ideas. Is one I read somewhere. I think it was from Morgan Housel's book, Same as Ever. I think. I could be wrong though. But he said, happiness is where you want what you already have. I like that a lot. You just desire, you don't desire to be anyone else, anywhere else, doing anything else. That is my best definition of what happiness is, a place of non desire. But also, Jimmy Carr, you know, the comedian, he put this in a very interesting frame for me in a podcast that I listened to recently where he said, why do we want the things we want? Well, we want them because we think they're going to make us feel a certain way. So what we really want is not the thing itself, but the feeling. And he said, why can't we just cut out the middleman and want the feeling, not the thing? So
Mm,
let's say I want to, I make YouTube videos because I want to eventually be a writer and monetize my brain and get and make a living thinking about the ideas that grip me and sharing their value with the world. Right? That's what I want, to feel like that guy. But I don't need hundreds of thousands of views to do that. Financially, I'm funded by my sport and a student loan at the moment, so not I'm not pinned down by any money I make through making content. What I want is to feel like that guy. And I don't need the thing then. I don't need the status, the numbers to feel like that guy. I can feel like that guy because I wake up every morning and I do write about ideas that I care about. I do talk on podcast conversations like this about things I care about. And when people are reciprocal in my world, I can share the value of these ideas. Does that make sense?
yeah, and I guess worst case scenario is you've written the book and you haven't seen the success from it. I mean, that's a lot of philosophers. Well, a lot of people in general don't see the success of their work, but at least they've made it. There's the question of, do you even have to be successful? Um, Maybe the answer is no, but you have to try.
Well, I think I'd much rather try and manifest this source within me that I feel wants to be actualized in reality through what I write about, what I speak about. I'd much rather do that and be unsuccessful and not get the financial gains and wealth from my ideas being known and be ridiculed by other people and have people not understand and be a bit more isolated. I'd much rather that than conform and pretend to be someone I'm not. I'd much rather write the book, no one read it, than not write the book. So then I'm writing the book because I want to write the book, not because I want people to read it. And that's a far better motivation, springboard to bounce off.
Another valuable post I found was, what is the secret to feeling whole? The one
Mm.
with the sort of chess context. Could you
Yeah.
tell the listeners about that?
Yeah, so I was actually driving somewhere Um, and this is where I think about Stephen Pressfield's idea of the muse in terms of this mystical source of creative ideas that is bigger than us. Because I was just driving and then this vision, this concept, this analogy just hit me. And it was the external world is like the board game that you play the game of life with. It's more like it's like the board and the set of pieces that you play the game of life with. But that's not the same thing as the game of life. The game of life that you actually play is internal. But the external world is just the stimulus. It's just the pieces that you move across the board in order to play the game. And that all just hit me in 1 second. And I literally just wrote it down in my Notion page. I wrote down the external world is better thought of as the playing board and set of pieces with which the game of life is being played. But just as having all the right pieces to play a game doesn't mean you know how to use them. Just as having everything you could ever want or need outside of yourself doesn't mean you'll feel fulfilled. And essentially my message of that was all this that goes on around us, that's not what you're experiencing. That's not the game you're playing. What you're experiencing in the game you're playing is the texture of your own mind. How awake does your spirit feel inside you? I mean, how fed is your soul? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? How do you feel when your head hits the pillow at night? How much joy and meaning do you derive from your experience? Now, notice in that, I've not said anything about how much money I make, what I do for a living, where I live, how big my house is, how many cars I've got, what qualifications I've got. I've realized none of that shit fucking matters. That's just like the playing pieces to play the real game in life. You have to go and do stuff. I have to go and compete as an athlete. I have to do a university degree. I have to earn money, right? I have to have a car that I drive. But they're just the tools that I use to build what I'm actually doing, which is having a spiritual internal experience. And the more you connect with that, and I don't know why I did, maybe it's through the meditation hours I've done or things I've read or the psychedelic experiences, whatever. But the more you tap into that mentality, the more you realize that everything out here doesn't fucking matter whatsoever. Because I can play the game of life with a shitty board game and a really expensive Monopoly set. You know what I mean? The game of life can be played on any board. It doesn't matter what's happening outside of you. The specifics, the details, they're just the tiny little extras that don't matter. The big things, the big hits, the big swingers in how you feel about your experience, they are all internal. They're all internal. And actually, it's given me a great mindset towards the things I do because I don't need it to work out. I want it to. My ego does. I feel a connection to wanting that status and respect and winning and dopamine. But I don't need it because I know my best self knows that what life is an internal spiritual experience.
I like that. I I like the idea that it kind of life is like chess, and the resourcefulness about it, that we don't all start with the best pieces, but a lot of us start with the same pieces, and how you kind of you're the player behind the chessboard, so the internal world, and you make the best decision you can with the information you have at the time. This strategy, this long term strategy to eventually get in the checkmate, but maybe the checkmate won't come. And I mean,
And
like,
maybe you get,
maybe you get
but at
checkmated.
least you got to play the game.
I guess checkmated is dying, isn't it? Yeah.
Eventually, you get checkmated.
But then I guess you can kind of analyze like decisions you made. I mean, like, you made the best decision you could moving to London, and that was a that you might have sacrificed your bishop um, to do that. And for me, like, investing my life savings into a clothing brand, that's basically killing off my queen. um, So I really like this idea. I think and I think it also is self blame. So not blaming the it's the player's fault, not the board's. Everything
Mm.
traced back to your own blame. Why something happened to you. Let me think of an example. Um, I guess if I was to fail my second year of uni, then I wouldn't blame that I'm doing all these things at the same time, and it's the fault that I have to have this responsibility. No, it's my fault that I didn't prioritize and put enough drive into my uni.
Mm. And what you're talking about there is internal locus of control. Where do you put the power of your destiny? It's in you and what you prioritize and what you do. Because if you wanted to smash this year of uni, you could give up the podcast and give up making the content you do for your clothing brand. But that's not what feels meaningful to you. And an interesting point, I think, is the way I look at things now, is that even from an outsider looking in at your life, it's not about the clothing brand. It's not about the podcast. What it's about is who Jacob is. And it's like the clothing brand and the podcast are just the stimulus, the tools, the pieces with which the game is played. But the game ultimately is the Jacob Matthew experience. You can replace Latunya with anything. You could have started playing golf when you were a kid, or got really good at darts, or been an artist, or been in film, or been a musician, or whatever the hell it is, right? All that is just a means with which who Jacob Matthew is becomes manifested in the world. Just as I've somehow come across psychology and wheelchair basketball, they are just the avenues with which who I am becomes something in the world. And so, with that perspective, you don't take things too deeply because it's part of the play of life. It's part of the dance. It's part of the performance. It's a scene of your reality. Is when you're 20 years old, living in Southampton, going through this process of filming this content, setting up these stunts, finding models, trying to get viewers onto your things, trying to make sales, trying to make it work. But what that is, what I see in that, I see as you comment on many posts, look deeper, right? I look deeper into that and I see, well, what that really is who is Jacob Matthew as a bloke? That's what I really see. And that's why I respect the things you do.
You've probably
Because that's
seen
what
like some sort of change in myself then.
for sure. For sure. You know, you're not the same kid you were when we reconnected, whenever that was. Was that February 2022 or something? You know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's what it's about.
yeah. Chess is life, everyone. There's a um. I'm trying to be. I want to be in there's this law in the 48 Laws of Power, which basically has the story of the best chess game of all time with Fischer and Spassky, and it's one of my favorite bits because I think the law is stir up water to catch fish, and it's this yeah, it's basically the known as the best chess game of all time because these two grandmasters are one. So I think it's Fischer who keeps turning up late and he's really messing with his opponent and he's being really unpredictable, making him really angry. And then there's what he's known for this one move of sacrificing his queen to eventually win the game and then win the tournament. And yeah, I want to be Fischer. Um,
Mm.
that's my story. Anyway, I've now got some. Actually, I'll go for one more general question.
I have to go at 7-ish, by the way. So if you want to pivot to listener questions, you could.
Okay, we have one from Christian. Do you think it's better to have loved and lost, or to have never loved at all?
I mean, if anyone picks not loved at all, then you're not spiritually okay, man. No one rationally or no one in a good place psychologically will pick that. That's the risk you take when you love something. So it has the potential to hurt you because that love can be stripped away. But it's far better to love and be in pain if that love goes than not love at all. Because if you're not loving at all, then what's the point, man? Love is the manifestation of all things that are good. I love the things I do. I love the people in my life. I love being Joel Clifton. As much as there's hardship and pain and all that kind of stuff, I love being here, man. And if your life is, if the human life is not about love, then what is it about? So, yeah, man, love deeply, even if it hurts.
Yeah, you have to be willing to, like, the feeling of love is worth the feeling of hurt.
They're two sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Like that David Data chapter, live with an open heart, even if it hurts. That's what I'd say to that one.
This one is from Matt. Hello. Wondering what you think about Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions.
I mean, I don't know what he's on about. Eucharistic miracles, let's have a look at this. Unexplainable phenomena such as Christian dominations. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's sort of just talking about miracles, but in the Christian faith, in the Catholic Church,
Right.
I guess. And what was the other point? The other one?
Marian apparitions.
Marian apparitions. Supernatural experience by Mary, the mother of Jesus, or a series of related appearances during a period of time. So he's talking about miracles and mystical shit. What was it? Do I believe in it, or what do I think of it?
Wondering what you think about it.
Okay, so an apparition. The apparition is where Mary, the mother of Jesus, appears to you in real life. They see her visually located in their environment. Okay, how do I?
There could be some similarities with that and kind of Mother Ayahuasca,
Look? Yeah, potentially. Look, do I believe it at face value? No. However, the realm of human perception is crazy. Do I think that people have had hallucinations where they see the mother of Christ and they visit them and give them messages? Yes, that's definitely happened. But is that in the physical reality around me now, like this table, this water bottle? No. It's a figment of the imagination. It's a vision that appears in reality. Same thing as a miracle. I think miracles might have just been hallucinations or crazy experiences that seem fated, but I do believe that crazy things can happen and human experience can turn into very mystical, abstract stuff. I think that's true. Whether it would happen to just like Joe Blow on the street, no. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is not appearing in Tesco in the meal the aisle. Do you know what I mean? She's going to appear to you when you've consumed a substance or when your brain chemistry is altered in a weird way or, something like that. These things, in principle, I can see how mystical shit happens and how people experience it. But is it like an everyday thing that I'd say, yeah, that's true? No. It has to have such a nuanced answer, so it's a difficult one to answer. But yeah, I'd have to do more research because I don't know this much about the specific things he mentioned.
It's beyond a different door of perception.
Yeah, like everything.
The miracle one's maybe a little bit more difficult. I don't know. It could be a glitch in the matrix. where some external
Well,
force comes to help you.
yeah, I just struggle to get behind theories. I accept that theories like that are interesting, but I wouldn't say I believe. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um,
You're
yeah,
quite like you believe it's a projection of the human brain.
yeah. I think I see it more from a psychological perspective of like it's a vision or a dimension of our imagination altering our perception. Not necessarily that the thing is there. You know, I think that psychedelic experiences, for example, that experience is real, but it is an experience. If that makes sense, like it's a subjective experience. It is your imagination or a projection of your brain through perception appearing painted on the concrete reality in front of you.
Mm.
But is it that we live in? Is it that that realm is a place we go, or maybe when we are freed of human limitation and we transcend all that when we die? But we don't know until we get there. So I don't know. Maybe I sound like I'm being wishy washy here and not sticking to an opinion, but I know that there's weird shit going on in the world. I know it's not just what we see on face value. I feel that, but you know, the mother of Jesus ain't gonna visit me. I don't think.
Unless it's in a psychedelic trip.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
I, I think I take some view of maybe like if a miracle was to happen, that could be God sending an angel to save me or something like that. I
Yeah.
think there.
But what do you define as a miracle? Give me an example. Like, what does that mean?
I don't
You
know.
know.
I don't know what a Eucharistic miracle is, but I guess a miracle could be.
Well, so for example, that's on this. This. Let's see. Is there examples on this that are easy to understand? Um. So I don't even know what that means. Catholic Church. Are there any examples? Yeah, like the belief that like when people, well, basically the belief that when people eat bread and drink wine in the Catholic Church, that it's actually the flesh and blood of Jesus. Like, I don't believe that. I'm sorry, but yeah, let's move on. Let's move on.
I just want to add one more point. Um, the to the adding to the kind of psychedelic and a different door of perception. There's like this story of Moses and the burning bush, and there's some theory about how the burning bush was supposed to have DMT in it, and so there was when it's burning um the debris was then able to give Moses the DMT trip. Um, so I think a lot of these maybe like Mary and all these turning Jesus, like maybe they were just all on psychedelics and DMT.
I feel like a lot of religious thinking came from spiritual experience, potentially those that are substance induced. Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
Okay, this is by a guy who goes by the name of Dr. Hubbard. Hi there.
Right.
Wondering if you were open to a pod. Well, we're not going to do a whole pod, but we'll answer the question on resource allocation, decolonial geographies, and how to approach them holistically. P.S. I love chimps and the primal stuff.
Right. Okay. Rewind. What was his actual question?
Resource allocation, decolonial geographies, and how to approach them holistically.
Okay. Well, that's not my expertise,
No,
so
no.
I'm gonna pass. Just reply. What does he think?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not too knowledgeable either. That's all the questions, but I'm glad they're more thought provoking than normally the DMs are.
Yeah. There's people actually asking questions. Interesting. Do you have any more thoughts for the last 10 minutes?
I do.
Go on.
We spoke before about how you justify the weight of existence by the sublime. I'd like to go in a bit more about that and why the sublime is so important.
It kind of links to another post I wrote this week. I don't know if you read the one about Brian Cox's definition of what life is, and how the best way to define life is that which derives temporary meaning from the universe. The sublime is when you come in contact with a force of nature or a phenomena that is so awe-inspiring and beautiful that it strikes you to your core. And we are finite beings in a eternal universe, right? We are tiny specks of dust in the cosmos, destined to be checkmated by life and eventually killed off, not remembered by anyone in 1,000 years' time, and there'll be nothing left of us. No evidence that Joel Clifton or Jacob Matthew ever existed. And humans are stricken with consciousness that is aware of that fact. So we need something larger than our individual selves that makes life feel meaningful despite the suffering, the pain, and the weight we all have to carry around with us. And that's what the sublime is. How you feel when you experience a sunset, or you fall in love with somebody, or when you look at the night sky, or moments of peace and presence where nothing crazy has to happen in front of you, but just the fact that you're really experiencing it on a deep level makes it so meaningful. That is the counterweight against the suffering and hardship that you go through in life. Finding meaning and sublime. The sublime is like the all-powerful, transcendental confrontations with meaning in reality. There's so much meaning we derive from looking at a sunset, and that's universal. Nobody looks at a sunset and gets bored. Everyone's captured by it. Everyone wants to take a photo with it. Everyone wants to film a little bit of it.
But
There's something about that.
why does seeing a nice sunset mean that's meaningful?
Because that's wavelengths of light being emitted from a star, interacting with our atmosphere and creating a beautiful array of colours on the sky. It's mental. And it's beautiful. And you have no idea how it happens. And it captures something in you.
And you said so. Um, the meaning of life is to take meaning from the universe to kind of.
Well, I said in the post that a better question than what the meaning of life is what meaning should we apply to the world through our experience it, through experiencing it, through our own personal experience.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. I get you. Yeah. I skimmed that one. I haven't read it fully. Um, yeah, because it's kind of the universe experience in itself, and then I guess we're kind of like all vehicles of trying to capture small amounts of meaning, and then it just kind of replicating and this being kind of like a whole universal thing. It's like a world
Mm.
of meaning.
Well, Brian Cox, this is why it struck me so deep. He said, life is that which gives temporary meaning to an eternal universe, right? Because without experience, without consciousness, without our attentional and perceptual systems, the world is just a lifeless construction of physical matter, right? It's our feeling of the sublime that applies beauty to a landscape, where it's our feeling of existential insignificance that makes the night sky so magical, or it's our tussle and fight with the great spectrum of human emotions that means that there are connections between ourselves and other life forms and the surrounding environment. Without life in this universe, then the universe would not be able to experience its own beauty. That's why Alan Watts said, we are the universe consciously experiencing itself. Right? When you feel in awe because of the sublime, when looking at the night sky or at a sunset, you are temporarily filled with the power of stars in the galaxy as they perceive their own beauty. And then I wrote, when we question the meaning of life, the meaning of all this going on, maybe the real answer is we are it. We are the meaning. Because our experience brings meaning to a universe that wouldn't be consciously experienced if we weren't here. And that's a really nice frame.
Was this him recently on Rogan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It was one of those, I don't really listen to him or those kind of episodes, but I just put it on in the car and let it sit for about half an hour. And when he said that quote, that's the only thing that I took from it, but it inspired a whole post. So
no, he
yeah, man,
was good the first time on Rogan. He's a good guest. Thanks
cool.
everyone for listening. Keep DMing questions and tell a friend about this podcast.